to a school in Massachusetts that's put more guys in the NHL than any high school in the United States.
Some Butler competition on this episode, at least, to get the rivalry going.
The bad decisions you make from Thursday to Sunday, they have an impact on Monday to Thursday.
You got a pretty cool story, man. We talked a couple weeks ago, and I'm pumped for those to listen today.
Absolutely, man. Well, I guess to go back to like the locker room guy thing, I became a locker room guy by like a need more than anything. I've been fortunate enough to grow up and play with a lot of great hockey players. I'm a hockey player. I grew up in a hockey household. My father was a high school hockey coach in Massachusetts for 35 years. I'm the oldest of three boys. We all played college hockey. One of my brothers played professionally and at the Olympic level. I went to a school in Massachusetts that's put more guys in the NHL than any high school in the United States. And I played for a great college team. So, I've never been the best hockey player in any room that I've been in. So I had to play a role, and every team needs a locker room guy. So, think of it as like chief culture officer. That was me typically on every team I've ever been on, is like make sure, obviously sports are hard, competing is hard, but it's supposed to be fun. And I think I brought that to every team and every organization I've been part of, is like, let's make sure we're having fun while we're doing this, because no matter what, it's going to be hard. You know what I mean?
100%. The glue guy also is sometimes referred to as. But JR, you're helping build the best sales teams in the world with the best athletes in the world. That's why I was pumped to have you on today, both because what you're doing in the world of business sales is incredible, but more so because it is impacting athletes and bettering them. I'd love for you to share how your transition from sport has helped you in business. You've sold companies, made crazy amounts of money. We won't dive into details there, but you were able to go from playing sport at the highest level, similar to Andrew Petcash, who we had on last week, and transition to business what seems like pretty seamlessly. Is that the case?
No, I would love to tell you that it's the case, but like I definitely, I think like anybody, I struggled with my identity for a while coming out of sports. When anybody asked me from when I could talk until I was like 23 years old who I was, my answer was I was a hockey player. And then one day it was just gone, right? And every athlete goes through it. Doesn't matter if it happens when you're in high school, college, or if you play 15 years of professional sports. Tom Brady's going to struggle with it. Probably after this season, to be honest, the way things are looking. But it's not easy, and it wasn't easy for me. From an identity perspective, I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be on a team always. I knew that I always wanted to compete. I knew that a huge part of my life growing up as an athlete was having mentorship and having coaches who cared about, my success and helped me achieve my success. And I had no idea how I was going to find those things. And essentially, I tripped and fell into a sales career. Initially, because I was still kind of angry and resentful about my athletic career ending, it didn't immediately click for me. But the second I understood that the things that made me a great athlete were going to pay off in this career, and the outcome could be very similar financially, it was like a light that switched. I had a completely new outlook, and I simply took the traits that made me, allowed me to go play Division I hockey, and I had to work for it. It wasn't like I was born with a ton of natural talent and natural skill. I worked my ass off to go to play at the college level, but I knew all those things that got me there could now get me to a point in the business world where I could be, financially have financial freedom, and financial independence. And as soon as I understood that, it was a game changer for me, because all I did was approach my new career the same way I would as an athletic career. I approached it professionally, and I became a professional salesperson. And when that light switched, I haven't looked back since. And like you said, I've been fortunate. I've been part of great organizations, and I have had some success. But without the foundation I built in sports, I wouldn't be where I am.
I love it, and I think more athletes through what the work that you're doing are going to recognize that sales could be a viable career option that's fruitful, to say the least. So you attended the College of Holy Cross, where you played hockey in 2006 for the team that upset the top-seeded Minnesota Gophers in the Midwest Regional. And I'd love for you to share what emotions went through that locker room on the ice after completing a feat like that.
There's a little bit of disbelief, right? I don't think anybody in that rink thought we could do it, except for the 27 or 28 people that were in the locker room afterwards. And even we were like, holy shit, right? Like, you got like 3 first rounders, future Iron Man, Phil Kessel, right? Like, no idea that we could beat them. So disbelief is the first thing that comes to mind, and then just pure joy and satisfaction because of the amount of work that every single kid in that locker room, every single coach in that locker room put into, not just that season, but everything leading up to that season, right? Like, it brings you back to, like, shooting pucks in your driveway at 13 years old. That's like the dream, is like being in, a packed Ralph Engelstad arena with North Dakota fans going crazy because they're so happy that you beat Minnesota. Like, that is like, it's really an unbelievable feeling. And I think the sense of accomplishment, the only other time I can say that I felt that way about not so much about myself, but about the people that were around me, my teammates, was like when our company sold, when I got the call that, like, hey, we're getting acquired, because you almost feel like vindicated, right? You feel like I knew it, like I knew I was right, I knew we were doing the right things, and in the case of an exit, you get financial compensation for it. In the case of a win, we were on the number one on SportsCenter. We're all over the news. Like, people still talk about it to this day, and that's the type of indication that is really, really hard to recreate. It was the best. It's one of the best feelings in the entire world.
How does a game like that go? Ups and downs. Like, you got to be intimidated stepping onto that ice when you've got a number one seed like that you're, frankly, you had no hope heading into that game. As a glue guy, big locker room guy, were you tapping the guys on the shoulder pads, on the shin pads at the beginning before that game started, getting them fired up? I know as a goalie, I struggled at times being able to connect with the guys on the bench because I was sitting at the one end of the rink. But for you as a player on that bench, like, what's going through? How are you getting the guys jazzed up?
Well, I think for me, it was about keeping it light, right? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the ice, what arena the ice surface is in. It's a hockey game, right? We played thousands of them. Everybody in that locker room played thousands of them our whole life. So everything from, like, the flight out there to team mail to team skate, keeping it light, making sure the boys are having fun, right? Because the second you get tight, you grip the stick tighter, everything's bouncing off of you. So for me, my roles 100% and nothing else was to make sure that everybody coming out there and everybody, before the game and everything was just, made sure that we all realized, like, hey, this is fun. This is really fun. We're playing in front of the most people most of us have ever played in front of before or since. And it's win, lose, or tie. This is an unbelievable experience. Let's make sure we enjoy it. So that was my role that whole weekend. Really was like keeping it light. Listen, when it comes down to it, in critical game situations, I'm not going to be out there. I'm not even going to be on the bench for that. It's for me. It's really about, like, making sure that everybody's in the right mindset going into that. Because if you play light and you have fun, you know what the outcome is. You tend to win when you're having more fun. You know what I mean?
100%. Hey, I feel like you obtained some of that winning the Betty Davis Award for top student athlete, sophomore, junior, senior year, varsity baseball, varsity football captain, like class president freshman year. You got a pretty solid list of accolades under your belt. and now you're coaching for South Boston Youth Hockey. What was that like growing up in Boston? Like rougher, cold weather, Bruins, Patriots. Like, give me the lowdown on what growing up in Boston was like.
I lived in South Boston as soon as I got out of college. One of my roommates in prep school was a South Boston kid. That's why I got involved in that program. I grew up in a part of Massachusetts, Worcester, Massachusetts, which is the second largest city in New England, which is outside of Boston. But we always joke around with like kids that are born in Boston. They think that Boston's the only city with triple deckers, right? Like Worcester's a blue collar town. My town right outside of Worcester, super blue collar town. It's definitely gritty, but I think it created in me like a really good foundation of work ethic, right? Because I was surrounded by people like my dad and my mom, right? I'm a first generation college graduate. My dad worked his butt off. He was fortunate enough to get into the mortgage business in 2000, right during the like kind of build up to 2008. So he made a ton of money doing that, and he didn't know anything. And he figured it out and had success. My mother was a hairdresser and became a very, very successful real estate agent. Again, like just completely bootstrapped themselves by the shoestrings, picked themselves up without really any formal education, and worked for every single cent they ever made. And that's really kind of how my whole family and all my friends that I grew up with, their parents were all like that, right? I didn't grow up around a lot of people born on third base that think they hit a triple, right? Anybody that I knew growing up that had success, they kind of bunted to get to first, stole second, came into third on a pass ball, and then if they got home, they typically stole that too, right? So I think that blue collar, hard hat and lunch pail type of approach to life is something that I'll take with me the rest of my life. I still probably work way more hours than I should, especially with the new culture of like work-life balance and all that stuff. But I'm a big believer, like you plant tomatoes, you get tomatoes. So whatever you put in, that's what you're going to get out. And that all goes back to my upbringing in central Massachusetts, because that's how it is there. It's hard hat and lunch pail territory.
I love the baseball analogies. Haven't heard of the bunt to first, steal in second. But I'm curious, if you were to rank Boston sports top to bottom, like where do the Patriots, Bruins, Celtics, who tops it off? Like podium?
So do you mean like in terms of like who I love the most, or like who's accomplished the most?
I'm more curious from your standpoint, who you would like, whether it's watching the football. Like, I'm curious kind of like where you rank them personally.
I mean, obviously I love the Bruins, right? I grew up right in when I was a kid, it was like Ray Bork, Joey Juneau, Adam Oates, Cam Neely, like awesome Bruins teams. I love the Bruins growing up. I've been to a ton of games as a kid, and that's what made me fall in love with hockey. So I have to put the Bruins first. Second is it's close between the Pats and the Red Sox. And what's funny about my generation of Massachusetts kid is both those teams were terrible until I was like 19 years old, right? The Patriots were awful until Bill Belichick took over in 2000 and Tom Brady won the Super Bowl in 2001. So that's like 18 years of them sucking most of my life. And then the Red Sox famously did nothing since 1918 until 2004 when Dave Roberts stole second against the Yankees. And then everything changed forever in Massachusetts. So from 1 year old to 18 years old, the Bruins, the Patriots and the Red Sox were terrible. And then for the past 20 years, we've been on an absolute heater in Boston. So I put the Patriots and the Red Sox kind of tied for second, 2A, 2B. I live right near Fenway Park now in the summers, and I absolutely love walking over to the games. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable experience. I think Bill Belichick, though, is the best coach in the history of sports, hands down, not even close. Okay. And then the Celtics, I mean, you don't even realize at my age I've seen one championship, but they're a legacy. Like they're a true dynasty in the 80s when I was growing up, when I was a baby. So the Celtics are really special too. I've only been to 2 Celtics games in my entire life though, believe it or not, right? Like we were not a basketball family. One time me and my brothers were bouncing a basketball at our neighbor's house, and my dad came home, he went in the garage, he took out a screwdriver, came over and popped the basketball, and he said, "No basketball during hockey season," because he's coached high school hockey, and he lost so many kids to like turned ankles and broken fingers because they're messing around in the driveway playing basketball. So basketball is like a 4-letter word for us growing up. I've grown to appreciate it now. I work with a lot of basketball players. I think it's an unbelievable game. But I go Bruins, Sox, and Pats, and then the Celtics last.
Okay. I was there in 2018 at Fenway when the Sox won that 100th game, beating the Yankees something like 11-2 or something crazy. Such a cool stadium, just incredible. Like the old seats, I can't get enough of it. You mentioned Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. Have you seen that Tom Brady documentary?
Yes, of course.
Thoughts on that? Like, I'm curious. We just watched like 3 episodes on row. Like, I'm curious. Got to get your take.
So this is like a third rail in Massachusetts when you talk about Brady or Belichick. And my family is split down the middle too. Me and my dad are Belichick. We're Belichick guys. Like, we think no Belichick, no Brady. And then the other half of New England will tell you it was all Tom, right? But football is such a strategic game, right? The physical matters, but like the thinking side of it and the strategy side of it's so important that I'm a Belichick believer. I go to the Church of Bill big time.
Okay. I mean, hey, there's something to be said to have 50-plus guys all motivated, achieving one goal. No other sport like that. And I think for both those guys, I mean, they were both involved. It's tough. We'll never know. We weren't in the locker room, but it'll be fun to debate it. I'm glad we'll get some Butler competition on this episode, at least to get the rivalry going. Tell me about the Line in the Sky Foundation.
So it's funny, right? When I think about that game against Minnesota, we were so close as a team, and it was kind of the culture when I got there where everybody was so close. And a lot of the reasons that's true is because of what happened several years before I arrived on campus. So in 2001, Holy Cross, basically 3 guys passed away within like a year and a half from cancer and mental illness. So these were guys, literally college-age kids that were on the team that, suicide, cancer, took their lives. And when I graduated, I was really close with the upperclassmen, and they were kind of underclassmen when those guys were there. They all remembered it, and we decided like, hey, we should really remember these people because of what they gave us. Right? They gave us a true appreciation for life and a true appreciation for that locker room and the guys we were around, because they lost people that were super important to them that were part of the team. And since then, we've lost a couple more guys to cancer that were Holy Cross graduates. So the Line in the Sky is really about remembering those gentlemen, their contributions to society and to the organization. And every dollar that we raise goes directly to cancer research and mental illness, which are 2 things that are very close to my heart and most people's heart, right? We've all had, people in our lives that have been affected by either of those 2 things, in some cases both. So it's a special organization. I'm really proud. 501c3s are a pain in the butt to run, a pain in the butt to start, the amount of paperwork and everything. So it's not easy, but it's super important that we continue the tradition of remembering those folks and giving in their names every single year, which we've been able to do.
Yeah. I always like to, shine light on some of the positive things that are going from it, and sometimes something positive that stems from a negative, right? And, the fact that you've been able to do that 12 plus years is incredible. So kudos to you on that. Let's talk about ShiftGroup, though. Let's shift topics, for lack of a better pun, and talk about how you support with SaaS sales, SaaS careers, getting athletes into these roles. Like, I'm in awe of what is out there for sales opportunities, frankly, in the SaaS space. I'm bullish on it. As an athlete, I'm like hungry for it, which is why this conversation is so intriguing to me. But I'd love to hear it from the horse's mouth. Like, give me the inside scoop on ShiftGroup and how it came to be.
So I think the first thing to emphasize is like, you can sell anything, right? Like sales is a huge industry. There's sales across a huge career. There's sales across every industry. But technology specifically, think about how much the world has changed since 2007 when the iPhone came out, right? The iPhone has created expectations for every single human being that has a smartphone in terms of how they interact with the companies they buy stuff from and the companies they go work for. And what that's created is an immense amount of pressure in corporate America to transform digitally and meet the customer and their employee where they are, which is on their phone. And what that means is you've had this exponential growth in the software industry. Every single vertical within an organization, whether it's HR, finance, marketing, manufacturing, even in healthcare, in the law space, in corporate real estate, in commercial real estate, in every single universities, everything is now being disrupted by software, right? It's officially, technology is officially the biggest industry by gross domestic product universally. The thing that is very well advertised out there is the skills and talent gap for engineers and developers to build software. The thing that isn't very well advertised is the talent gap for people to sell technology. All technology is changing and optimizing the way you're doing something into doing it faster, better, and more efficiently. And technology's been around. Like, I always think of the first technology salesperson as like the caveman that rolled out the wheel out of the cave, and like somebody was dragging a cart, and they were like, "Hey, it'd be a lot easier if we put it on this cart, and here's why." That's literally what selling software is. Now, so that's number one, is like the industry has massive upside. It's continued to grow. You know, I always remind people, like, right now, a 22-year-old entering the job market was 7 years old when the iPhone came out. That means that they have had a phone in their hand their entire life, like remember their entire life as far as they can remember. So they are going to expect to interact with the companies they buy stuff from and the companies they work for a lot differently than I am when I was, 21 when the iPhone came out. I'm in a much different situation. Now, if you think about what that means moving forward, it's a huge opportunity because software is going to become more and more important. The cool part about selling software is I don't need to know how the software works, right? Mm-hmm. I need to understand what business problem it solves, how it solves it uniquely, and why that's valuable to an organization. Then I need to get to the right organization and the right person in that organization, and then I need to partner with them to build a business case. That means that anybody can do it. But the more important skills to sell software are, hey, are you resilient? Can you handle no a lot? Are you competitive? Are you willing to call and persistent? Are you willing to call this person 10 times because they're not going to pick up until the 10th phone call, right? Are you coachable enough to learn what makes your software unique, right? Do you have a growth mindset? Do you believe, even at 23 years old, when you've gone to college, gone to high school, and learned a lot, that you can continue to learn? And if you have those skills, that's what it takes to be successful in technology sales. You don't need to go back to medical school. You don't need to go to law school. You don't need to go get your CPA. You need to have a passion for excellence on the skills and habits and processes that are going to make you successful. You need to practice those skills, habits, and processes with intention. And then you need to pursue goals that those skills, habits, and processes get you. Does that sound familiar? Because it's the exact same thing it takes to be successful in sports, right? So literally, as a sales leader, I've hired hundreds and hundreds of sales reps. Those are the intangible traits that I looked for: was passion for excellence, practicing with intention in pursuit of goals, and then resiliency, competitiveness, coachability, and a growth mindset. And that's why I started my business, is because that's what companies are looking for. And that's the type of career that an athlete's really going to enjoy. And that's kind of what ShiftGroup is a marriage of those two things.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's well needed in the space. I'm curious, if you were to pick one athlete from one sport to fill your sales roles, what sport would that athlete be from?
Give me the walk on the walk on like Power 5 football player all day every day.
Okay.
That's the one I want. It's hard for me to say that as a hockey player, but the reality is if you look at the schedule and the expectations of like these really big football schools and football programs and what these kids have to like consume on top of their academic workload, if you can do that for 4 years and graduate successfully, and oh by the way, you earned it by like walking onto campus, showing up in August and convincing a coach to give you a shot, like you're a special human being. I'd say that, and like obviously like female soccer and field hockey players, same thing, like they're animals. But like if I had to pick one, it's the walk on at a big Division I football program.
Okay, I like it. I'm curious because I think there's many different rules, and obviously there's exceptions to every rule. But man, there's something about NCAA, about athletes in general, that mindset. That's why you've built a business around it. There's another switch, another gear that athletes have in the back of their head, and whether they've even accessed it recently or not is a whole other question. That's probably what you do, is unlock it and say, hey, like you did this 5 years ago in sport. Now imagine the benefit that it could provide financially for you as well.
Yep, that's exactly right.
I'm always curious because sales gets a bad rep at times. You get the sales cold call, whatever the case may be. How do you objection handle that, for lack of a better term?
Well, I think like first and foremost, right? There's the it's like a seller's debt, right? We all think, when we think sales, we think of like the greasy-haired used car salesman in a bad suit trying to push a lemon on us. So the first thing we talk about is B2B is very different than direct to consumer, because you're solving business problems, right? You're not spraying someone with perfume in the middle of a mall trying to get them to buy it, right? So that's the first one. The second thing we talk about is like sales today is a lot different because of the amount of information that's available to people out there. So to be a really good salesperson, you really have to be an expert in your customer, in their world. You have to understand their problems and their needs and their priorities, and then that's how you sell, is you align to those things. So it's not like the guy in front of the room doing a great presentation that's a great salesperson. It's the person sitting down with someone and really trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish and understand their priorities, and then aligning your solution to that. So we do a whole course around kind of destigmatizing sales, because it does still have a bad rap. I don't know how long that's going to last. It might be forever, but hey, I'm okay with that. If people want to continue to think that's what sales is, then it gives us an opportunity to build a really big business.
Yeah. Hey, and we get to address it and showcase them why it's not the case, right? And
Exactly.
I'm curious. I'll shift again. When you think about people who you grew up, you talked about Cam Neely, Adam Oates on those Bruins teams. Were there athletes or business professionals that you looked up to growing up that you were like, I want to try and emulate that and build something like they've done?
Yeah, so I mentioned Ray Bork too. Ray Bork was like a huge, and I was really fortunate. I got to play for him in high school. I graduated with his son. Yeah,
very cool.
And we went to school together like 6 months after he won the cup in Colorado. But he was like, his leadership, right, was always like super impressive to me, right? Like you could tell that he led by example and with his words, and that's just someone that I've always really, really kind of admired, and even as I've gotten to know him and like the special dude that he is, like he's always been there. And then like not to be corny, but my dad and my mom also, right? Like from a business perspective, you
For
know,
sure.
I'm talking like pure hustle, like I've never seen, right? Like came from nothing, built like a really special life and a great childhood for me and my brothers, all through share work ethic and nothing else. And I just think like, you know, I've been born with some talents, and if I can take my talents and apply the type of work ethic that my parents have, the sky's the limit. And hopefully I'm starting to prove that a little bit. So from a business perspective, it's really my mom and my dad. Like they just impressed the hell out of me because they didn't have any type of guidance whatsoever. And they're both salespeople, right? At the end of the day, right? My dad sells money. My mom sells houses. And they learned it all themselves through hard work. So I think they're two of my biggest heroes for sure.
I love that. Any regrets? Any areas where you're like, that was a missed opportunity, and like twofold, how'd you learn from those and apply it?
Yeah, so I think of two areas. One's a big one. I've been sober for 10 years.
Good for you.
Thank you. It's good for everybody. Trust me. That I'm sober. I stopped drinking when I was about 27 years old. So like, you know, I got off to a good start in my career, but had I been more dialed in and more focused, I think I'd be even further ahead than I am now. So that's a huge regret for me. And listen, I definitely struggled with substance abuse, but more than anything, I was a weekend warrior. And I don't think you appreciate in your early 20s and mid 20s and even late 20s that like the bad decisions you make from Thursday to Sunday, they have an impact on Monday to Thursday, right? And that's a huge regret for me. You know, that's something that whenever I go talk to teams or to athletes, I always say that, like, hey, you should have fun. You should have fun. You should really enjoy yourself. Obviously, as a locker room guy, it would be inauthentic for me to tell you to not have fun, but have some balance with it and make good decisions, because it does matter what you do on Saturday night, on Monday morning. The second thing is, I think like as a hockey player, as an athlete, and as an Irish Catholic from Massachusetts, like I pride myself on my loyalty, and I think I've been in the past too loyal to people and to companies, right? Like I missed some opportunities, sticking around too long in certain places because I felt like that was the right thing to do, because that was the story that I told myself, right? So I think, you know, taking care of number one should be your number one priority, and number one is you. And just really realize that at the end of the day, as an employee, you're as valuable as your last quarter, at least in sales, right? So I think that like misguided loyalty is something that I regret a little bit looking back.
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard a lot of people bring that up, but like I can even myself personally identify with that and start thinking about some opportunities that were missed. And it's like, hey, but you never know, right? And grass is always greener on the other side, and hindsight's 2020. Okay. So you can adapt and try, and that's all you can do is make educated decisions based on what you've experienced in the past and learn from others and try and rectify those problems. But JR, you're familiar with the show. The way we wrap up is by asking our guests what their biggest piece of advice would be for the next generation of athletes. You kind of provided two tidbits there. So maybe I'll let you plug ShiftGroup, where people can find you on social media, and then I'll let you chew on what that piece of advice would be.
Yeah. So I do have a nugget for everyone, but in terms of ShiftGroup, they can come to just come to our website, www.shiftgroup.io. If there's any current student athletes that are in college, we are running a competition from January 1st to May 5th, the Sales Athlete of the Year competition. We're going to give the winning student athlete $25,000 at graduation. We're going to deliver the check in person. And the only thing you have to do is go through our training and take our final test. You only need to go through the training once, and you can take the test as many times as you want. And we don't care, Division I, Division II, Division III. You just have to be a graduating senior in May to qualify for that competition and obviously go through the training. So www.shiftgroup.io to learn more.
$25K on the line. Fuck yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's
imagine that.
very cool, dude. Oh man, game changer. Like just having that between NIL, having those opportunities to make money as an athlete is so important. And that's the mission here too. You know, we want to make sure that we're educating, entertaining, and inspiring that next gen. So I appreciate you doing that today. What's that nugget though that you've been holding back on us, Mr. Butler?
Well, your network is your net worth. Take advantage while you're playing sports. Take advantage of the fact that you got a jersey on and people really care about you. Not that they don't care about you when you retire, but there's a difference when you're playing and when you're not. So I would say to anybody that's still playing sports at the collegiate or professional level, take advantage to talk to and network with as many people as you can around your organization. Not, I'm talking alumni, I'm talking your teammates, parents. Get out and ask questions about what they do, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, how they got to where they got to, and just start seeing what's out there, right? The reality is 2.4% of college students play sports and 2% of them go to play professional, right? And less than 1% of them make enough money to never have to work again. So you're going to have to find another job someday. You're going to go on a second career journey. So go out and learn as much as you can while people still are open to talking to you while you're playing. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not work, it's network. Get out there and ask questions and start to learn what's out there for you when you're done. If you find interest in tech sales, come to us. But if there's other things out there, go do that. But ultimately, the only way you're going to know is by talking to people about it.
That's such great advice. Just do a needs analysis on your environment around you, right? So you got to ask questions. I love it.
100%.
JR, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us, help us educate, entertain, and inspire that next generation of athletes. Hope you have a great day. Thank you those for listening. I appreciate your time, JR.
Thanks, David.